Debate. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in this House today in order to present the government's firm commitment to fight and protect Canadians against terrorists, jihadists, who are seeking to destroy the very principles upon which we've built this country, a place that is a democracy and freedom and is the envy of the world. The international jihadist movement has declared war on Canada and on our allies. We've seen Canadians that have been the target of terrorists simply because these people hate our society and the values that it represents. We can recall the attack on the 20th of October at Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu and here in our national capital. And these are events we will not forget and remind us how serious these issues are as a country for us. These attacks, like the most recent ones with our allies, whether it was in Sydney, Paris, or in Denmark, are evidence of the violence that can occur at the hands of these determined terrorists. These events have strengthened our government's determination to act. Our Prime Minister has said that we have not acted excessively and that neither were we going to remain passive in the face of this terrorist threat that is evolving. That's why I have the honor of presenting, along with my honorable colleague, the Minister of Justice, this important legislation on behalf of our Conservative government. It's legislation, Mr. Speaker, that people have worked very hard on. They didn't spare any effort to produce a bill that's balanced and a bill that will ensure that Canadians will be able to count on the government to protect them from the terrorist threat. Like you and many people in this chamber, I recall very well the events at the end of October. I remember being sitting down in the caucus room and we heard gunshots a few steps away. There was a lot of disarray in the moments that followed, but we managed to be calm and react moderately. Also, in the days that followed, I went to the funeral for Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent, and I remember also what his sister said during the funeral. She asked us to ensure that her brother's death not be in vain and that he not have died at the terrorists' hands in vain.
Of any government than to keep its citizens safe. That is a responsibility that our Conservative government takes very seriously. And that's why we have taken and are taking today strong action on this file. We've always said that the threat is real and that we must remain vigilant. We must also adjust to that evolving threat, and that's why we are tabling this bill. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government passed the Justice for Victims of Terrorism Act, which listed Syria and Iran as state sponsors of terror. More than a year ago, we passed the Combating Terrorism Act, which made it illegal to travel abroad to engage in terrorism or receive training to engage in barbaric and horrific acts here at home. We took measures to strip the citizenship and passports of terrorists, despite the lack of support from the opposition. And a few weeks ago, we have passed the Protection of Canada from Terrorist Act through this House. This important legislation gives CSIS the tools it needs to investigate serious threats to Canada and confirm that it has the mandate to operate here and abroad and to exchange information with our allies and partners. We have also listed numerous entities as terrorist organizations, effectively cutting off the lifeblood of their resources. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, when it comes time to vote on these measures, Conservative members often stand alone, while others play politics. Notre gouvernement
Our Conservative government was very clear on the need to present new measures in order to guarantee our safety and security and ensure that our security agencies, our intelligence agencies, have the necessary tools to do the work that they are given. The bill before us today represents an important step to improve the means that our services have, as well as our police services have, to fight effectively against the terrorist threat.
Act 2015 will give our national security agencies 21st tools to combat jihadist terrorists wherever they may be. There are 5 key elements to this important bill. Et même si elles sont...
And even if they are complementary in many respects, these measures will allow us to build on knowledge, expertise, and the work that's currently done in the federal government community, and will also be to the benefit of increased security for our country. The first aspect we need to look at is simple. When we take the time to explain it to people, they say, how is it possible that you haven't already done this? And that is to allow for the sharing of information within federal government entities.
Legitimately expect that if one branch of government is aware of a threat to their security, that this information would be shared with other branches of government to protect Canadians. Well, this is not the case, and we need to fix this. We need to fix this with that bill, Mr. Speaker. In many cases, barriers to effective information sharing are rampant across government, slowing the speed of this exchange to a crawl or acting as a total barrier. These barriers exist in the form of often well-intentioned legislation. However, in the national security context, they manifest themselves into unacceptable silos that put Canadians at risk. Voici un exemple sur le...
Here's an example, Mr. Speaker. A passport official gets in touch with a reference of an applicant in the case of a routine application check. If this person says that she is greatly concerned about the intentions of the applicant, that this person may travel to Iraq to fight for the Islamic State. Currently, the passport official could begin an investigation to see if this could be refused, this application turned down on the grounds of national security. However, the passport official would have difficulty exchanging information proactively. They would have difficulty doing this and in order to investigate this threat. So this could push this individual to commit a terrorist act in Canada, because if we prevent the person from traveling abroad, they become a threat here, given they didn't get a passport. So there could be a terrorist act committed on Canadian soil instead. That's unacceptable, and that's what we're trying to correct in the first of the 5 measures put forward in this bill to improve the means that we currently have to reduce the terrorist threat at home. Under the Anti-Terrorism Act 2015, passport officials could proactively exchange information with national security agencies in order to deal with this possible terrorist threat.
Obvious changes, Mr. Speaker, through the creation of the Security of Canada Information Sharing Act are common sense solutions to real problems, and this is our duty to make it come through. Contrary to dire suggestions by some members of the opposition, who should certainly read the bill before fear-mongering, There are robust safeguards in place to protect the liberties of Canadians, such as review by the Privacy Commissioner, the Auditor General, and various other oversight bodies. And also, Mr. Speaker, may I add at this point in time that we have consulted the Office of the Privacy Commissioner in the making of that bill. However, I fundamentally reject the argument that protecting our security threatens our freedom. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, there is no liberty without security. Canadians that I have spoken with about this legislation understand that their freedom and security go hand in hand. The fact of the matter is that our police and national security agencies are working to protect our rights and our freedoms, and it is jihadi terrorists who endanger our security and who would take away our freedoms. The second element of this legislation that I would like to share with you, Mr. Speaker, is the Secure Air Travel Act, which finds its origins in the Air India Report Action Plan. We call it the Passenger Protect Program, or also the No-Fly List. It currently relies on authorities found in the Aeronautics Act, but has never been given its own legal footing.
Clearly, the air travel system remains a target for terrorists, and that is the reason why this list was established following the World Trade Center attacks. But we also have to take extra measures to deal with the growing number of individuals who travel by air with a goal to carrying out terrorist acts abroad.
Although it's not an immediate danger to air travel, it can be a direct danger to the country of arrival and for Canada's allies abroad. Canada cannot tolerate a Canadian citizen's involvement in terrorism here or abroad, and that is why we need to improve our system so that it applies to those who travel with the intention of committing a terrorist act. So this would be an extra tool for the government to use to prevent people from traveling to commit terrorist acts, including cases where it's impossible to arrest a person or prosecute them currently. This bill will allow the government to use proportional security measures like refusing boarding or an extra physical search before boarding at the airport as an extra means of managing the risk that individuals may pose for air travel to partake in terrorist activities.
Are safe and secure, both from those who pose a risk to aviation security, which is the case actually, and from those seeking to travel to seek martyrdom or carry out other twisted ideological violence. So that's why, Mr. Speaker, as the first part, which is information sharing amongst a federal agency, we also need to protect our sky from terrorists. Maintenant, permettez-moi.
Now, allow me to turn to the third part of this anti-terrorism bill. It's a major change to the mandate of the Canada Security Intelligence Service. The mandate is now over 30 years old, and there's been no major change to it in all that time. Unlike security intelligence gathering agencies of those of our closest allies, CSIS can only collect information in order to detect security threats. CSIS is currently unable to take direct action to protect Canadians and the interests of Canada.
Practice, Mr. Speaker. Let's say, and I think this issue was raised during question period, so I hope our colleagues are listening carefully, that CSIS has become aware of an individual in the process of becoming radicalized. Perhaps he is acquiring jihadist propaganda or viewing radical material posted on YouTube. In fact, Individuals within his own close circle have advised CSIS that they are concerned he may travel for terrorist purposes. Currently, CSIS can investigate, but cannot do anything to stop the individual from traveling. The furthest CSIS can go now is to advise the RCMP that they believe he is about to commit an offense, and then the RCMP would launch an investigation. So we are far from action, Mr. Speaker. Under the Anti-Terrorism Act 2015, Mr. Speaker, CSIS could engage with a trusted friend or relative to speak with this individual to advise against traveling for terrorist purposes. Further, CSIS could meet with the individual to advise him that they know what he is planning to do and what the consequences of taking further action would be. These needless roadblocks have the potential to cost human lives, Mr. Speaker, and as I've just explained, and we've seen that all our Western allies are providing their intelligence with these kinds of tools. Mais avec ce mandat,
But with this reinforced mandate, CSIS would have access to a whole host of techniques to thwart threats, to frustrate a person's plans or change their behavior. For example, they could share travel plans of a potential terrorist traveler with that person's family, which is legal, but the CSIS can't currently do that because it's outside of its intelligence gathering mandate currently. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker, as is currently the case with intelligence gathering, in order to do anything more intrusive, CSIS would need a warrant from a judge before taking action. What's more, these disruption activities to frustrate threats will be subject to a very serious review by CIRC, the Security Intelligence Review Committee. CSIS will also be required to report annually on the recourse to these measures under its new mandate, and that will be tabled in Parliament. CSIS will also have to present statistics on its use of warrants to disrupt threats.
and NDP members have expressed concerns about the level of oversight of our national security agencies. Well, on this side of the House, we believe and are proud of our Canadian model. It is a third-party, non-partisan, independent, expert oversight that is bringing continuity into monitoring the intelligence community, Mr. Speaker. And we believe that is way better than importing a made-in-America political intervention in the process. And I would reiterate, Mr. Speaker, the important point which often seems forgotten around this place, that it is the jihadi who are representing a threat and not our own police officer and those who are protecting us. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Justice, will be able to speak on that bill because there are two other very important measures in that bill, and I see that time is running, Mr. Speaker. Let me briefly mention those two measures, Mr. Speaker. Le quatrième élément du...
The fourth aspect of this bill has to do with an amendment to the criminal code to allow police and the Auditor General, with a mandate from a judge, to intervene when someone constitutes a threat. And fifthly, and those following me will speak more to this point, is that as we increase our prevention efforts by eliminating terrorist propaganda, in other words, by putting a stop to activities on websites that might constitute terrorist propaganda, and by criminalizing those who might encourage or incite others to commit terrorist acts.
common sense measure, and who could oppose the federal agency sharing information amongst themselves to better protect Canadians in full respect of our charter and our constitution, Mr. Speaker. I must tell you, I was really proud to work on that bill. Unfortunately, we may expect, and we've seen this afternoon, the kind of rhetoric we've been given by the opposition, but I'm certainly open and hope we will have an open and fair debate and a sound question on this important bill for the safety of Canadians. Thank you.